All right, I'd like to call the meeting order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Next item on our agenda is approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting. Are there any changes?
Yes, there is.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to amend the agenda for tonight's meeting.
So moved.
There a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Items, Frank.
Okay, it's to add a proposed motion, and the motion is, hang on here. They get the second one. The motion is requesting text amendments to regulate short-term rentals within the Ocean Pines community.
All right. Any other changes or additions to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the agenda with the change noted that by Director Daly? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The agenda is approved as amended. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from the June 30th regular meeting. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes from the June 3rd meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the June 3rd regular meeting, please signify by saying aye.
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 I'm
Opposed?
abstaining because I wasn't there.
All right. Please record 6 yea,
Who's
1
abstaining?
abstain.
I am.
Steve was not there. Okay, next item on the agenda, President's remarks. I have a couple of things. Number one, with all of the activity and the newsworthy items that have been regarding the COVID-19 virus, I think just a word of caution and a word of just advice. It's not over yet. Everything we're hearing is the fact that it's still there with us, and therefore I would just urge our residents, and anybody else to continue to take the precautions, for social distancing, for wearing a mask, and all the other things that have been the CDC guidelines, because protecting our community is certainly something we want to continue to do. And like I said, I'd urge everybody to take those requirements seriously, and please practice them, because you're not only helping yourself, but you're helping your community members as well. Next item I wanted to comment on, there has been a report there's been some KKK literature dropped off in driveways. And I just want to make sure, and I think my colleagues here will agree, under no circumstances does the board condone that kind of rhetoric, that kind of hate speech, and that kind of promotion. And therefore, although we cannot do anything about it, we just want to take a position that says we do not support that kind of communication within our community. And hopefully it was a one-time event and it will stop, but nevertheless, we just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of our position on that. One other thing, with regard to the July 4th and no fireworks, what comes to mind is, will there be a lot of, we'll just call them neighborhood-centric fireworks going off in Ocean Pines? I suspect there will be some exuberance in setting off fireworks. I don't have an answer for you other than to let people know that we hope that if anything is done, it's done within a reasonable amount of control, that it's not disruptive to the neighbors. But certainly, I would hope that people use good discretion. If they have to fire off some fireworks, quite frankly, I think they think nothing will happen, but that would be probably ludicrous to think nobody would be setting off fireworks. So I'd ask that the folks that were considering doing something like that, please use common sense, and please be aware that your neighbors are also being affected by all of the activities associated with that. A couple other things. One, we've formed another work group. We've been approached by a company called Maztec regarding a cell tower for Verizon. We're in the very early stages of that. We're coordinating with the county, and we're going to open some dialogue to see if that's something that can be pursued. It was talked about a year and a half ago, and there wasn't a lot of momentum. It's being revisited, and although we don't have any follow-up just yet, we do have meetings coming up to discuss that topic, and so therefore there will be more to come on that particular topic. One other thing, the annual meeting is scheduled for August 8th. It will be held at the Veterans Memorial outside. Reason being, we wanted to make sure we maintain all of the CDC guidelines regarding social distancing, and we felt that it would be beneficial to have it outside because hopefully we will get a quorum of 100 people. The Assateague room, if we were going to practice social distancing, would not have the appropriate capacity to allow us to be in compliance with those requirements. So August 8th, we're moving the annual meeting for OPA to the Veterans Memorial. There will be additional information coming for that, but I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that as of today. And then the only thing last comment I wanted to make is there's going to be a very interesting discussion. I'm looking forward to it with our board colleagues on the issue of the short-term rentals. And I really think that it's important for us to discuss that. I'm very encouraged that we're having this discussion and looking forward to it. So those are the end of my, my comments. The next item on the agenda is the GM report. John?
Thank you, Doug. Okay, so let's start off with our initiative report that we've been going through for the last year. As you can see, it's starting to dwindle down as everything has been completed. Police building, construction status green. Completion date has been scheduled for September. I do believe that I will be coming to you probably next month with a building that is completed. Estimated cost, $1.276. Spent to date, $893,000. We're on track, on budget, looking favorable to budget as of now. Next, North Star Software Project, green, yellow. The extended date, we've extended it out to December, probably to the end of the fiscal year. The estimated cost, $400,000. We're approximately at that cost right now. I have reported over the last several months that we will probably go over that amount. The admin renovation is green. I'll probably close this out next month. It'll be done, completed before schedule. $220,000 estimated cost. The spend is around $101,000. Just a couple things I just want to note also. We have set up a ballot box, safe for the ballots, working with Steve Haberger. And we have the cameras in place, so we'll be talking about, and I'm sure he will shortly. As far as this room with the acoustics, we are working on it. We'll see how tonight goes, but I'm working with Mid-South. Josh is also, and there will be some adjustments. KPIs, phone calls, we've had, obviously, with the COVID-19 and everything else, they've probably tripled. We've probably received about over 150 calls this month. I know Colby said she did about 50, and I can tell you that Michelle has done as well. Turn the page. Let's talk about North Star, what's been done. Well, the team met on Tuesday, June 30th. It gave an update. Progress has been made in all areas. By areas, I'm talking about every department and the POS system. There is an initial list that's updated every week. Progress is being made. Same thing with the POS system. CPI members have been identified to join the team that needed to be jump-started. Nothing wrong there, but we just needed to get the resources in place. With the COVID-19, we were shorthanded. Priorities for data needed for the election, they are focused on reports needed for that. The budget and timeline has been updated. Turn the page. Public Works Maintenance Report. Now that basically the construction is pretty much getting completed, team has been focusing on maintenance, which is a priority of this team. I've listed it, or we've listed it by amenity, by department. It's all there for you. If everybody, I'm not going to read through all of them. Just some highlights, though. They obviously got the beach club up and running. For May, the racket sports, there has been a situation down there where there needed to be repairs to the chain link fences, and also with the platform tennis. That's all been completed. We do have some concrete work that we're going to probably work on in the next week or two. Yacht club, basically the same thing. There was some maintenance. There was a situation that the team fixed, and that was with the HVAC system. Aquatics, same thing, maintenance, getting the pools all ready. Golf course, similar. Turn the page. Okay, so with the reopening of Ocean...
Can I interrupt for just a second?
Sure.
Just real quick, I'm sorry,
No, I'm fine with it.
With the maintenance report, I see that we did all the work. When I ran last year for the board, I was talking a lot about putting together a preemptive maintenance of people going out from Public Works to review what's going on and make sure nothing's broken on a monthly basis, just to keep ahead of it rather than having it all flood at one time. Have we ever looked back into that?
So they actually do have a report. I'll actually have it for you. You can, if you want to stop in. I know Eddie and also Colby has worked on it where they have a checklist, if that's
Right.
what you're talking about.
Okay.
They do have that, yeah.
All right, great. I just want to make sure.
No, you're right, and we do have it.
I appreciate it.
Yep, good. Okay. So I believe I'm on Rec and Parks. So the reopening of Ocean Pines, the golf course has already been open, racket sports. I believe it's been successful. The Rec and Parks now are opening. This is an update I've received from Debbie and her team. All parks and playgrounds are open except for the White Horse Park basketball courts. Those are not open. Okay? And we'll give you more update on that. Starting some sports camps in July. The camps in general have started. They're doing well. Everything that we do, we have run by legal. That's on me. The marina, I'm getting good numbers from the marina, and that is doing well, all things being considered. So Rec and Parks, marina open, all positive stuff. Aquatics, basically the same from the team there. Here's all the dates. You probably know it already. Kobe and her team and Kathleen have all the pools open. You can see the dates. They're telling me there was limited occupancy. Obviously, the rules from the governor, limited hours due to lower staffing. Pool members happy with first access to pools for first hour. Exercise classes start next July 6th. Overall, I have to say, all the updates I received from the team, the aquatics team, Kobe and Kathleen, have been positive. I just want to thank all the members of Ocean Pines that are, I know it's not the easiest thing, but I think everybody has worked really well to make it a success. Turn the page. All right, so let's look at some pictures. So I have pictures, actually, others besides this beautiful building. So here's our police station. This first picture is the front entrance. So you can see that there. Turn the page. When you walk in the building, the first thing you would see is the dispatch. I guess this picture is from the dispatch office looking out into the lobby. Turn the page. This is the chief's office. Yeah, good. Locker room, all new lockers. What a difference when I was in there today from where we were. The office workstations. And next time I'll have a couple more slides for you of the cells and the armament room and all the differences from where we were. Everything's been good, on track. They were putting the rug in today. So probably when I report next month, we might be done. Public Works is on site, doing all the site prep. They've been there the last couple days. Okay? Good. So let's look at some financial numbers. Yeah. All right, so it's an easy month. It's the first month. The month is the year to date. Hopefully everybody's got that. So I just have the one slide and then some detail. So if you look at this for the net revenues, now again, this is financial change for the month of May 2020, the first month of the fiscal year. So the net revenues, you can see, we were unfavorable by $370,000. So basically, obviously with the COVID-19, we had, our amenities weren't open on May 1st. So there was a situation there. Expenses are down and favorable. Again, we didn't have our seasonal workers in place because we weren't open at certain times. That all, as you can see, and as we're updating, is starting and hopefully will continue to grow. Net operating profit, $92,000 to the favorable. Yeah. So obviously that deserves a slide. We'll turn the page and let's get some detail on the $92,000 favorable, right, in a year with COVID-19. So let's skip that first one, general admin. The public relations is favorable, 22.8. Compliments to that team there, that gentleman in the back and Julie. They've done a lot of good work there. General maintenance is favorable, 28,000, 29,000. Again, we have had open positions in public works and maintenance that we're looking to fill. Public works, I just talked about that, is favorable. Police is favorable, some expense savings. Aquatics, as you would expect, aquatics would be down because of the way we have to open, right? They were at 25%, 50%, so you would expect something like that. Same thing with golf operations. Similar in the sense with the COVID-19 and certain days that we weren't open, the use of the carts. When we had one person per cart, we didn't have enough carts, and we had to turn away some potential golfers. The thing I want to say about golf operations, and we've been able to look at, is this. If you look at the May, and when you look at the controller's report, and you compare the memberships to last year, maybe it's down $15,000, $20,000. The good thing is when you look at June, which we've already done, and it's favorable to last year. So Out of that 15 to 20,000 that we were short compared to last year in memberships, we're already up $7,000, $8,000 in June. So it's kind of coming back. I would hope that would happen with aquatics too, considering that everything goes forward in a positive route. All right, but again, unpredictable challenges with the COVID-19. Beach parking, unfavorable, $146,000. So again, when I give you the June numbers, you will see that some of that is coming back. Again, COVID-19, people weren't here, weren't sure if we would even open the beaches or whatever. But we are seeing favorability to other months this month, last year. Food and beverage, I just gave you a net number, loss of $14,000. Yacht Club was unfavorable, $16,000. Beach Club somewhere favorable, about $17,000, $18,000. And the grill was unfavorable, $13,000. I will go back and touch on that when I do the general admin. Racket sports unfavorable, $15,000. The other was favorable by $5,000, and that was mostly finance. That's your detail for the 92.1. But let's go up to general admin where you see $336,000. So we know I didn't generate that, right? So what that is the PPP. So, and this is important because when you receive the controller's report, the way we report it is this. Every amenity, every department will have the payroll and will stand alone and will be the actual numbers. In general admin, what I'll call is a top entry, is where we book the PPP. As other income, that number is approximately $304,000. So out of the 1.143, we used in May approximately $310,000. But that's where it is. So when you look at aquatics, when you look at golf, those are pure numbers with the salaries, with the payroll. The offset is the PPP recorded as other income. We've reviewed that with our outside auditors. That is the way I wanted to do it. That is the way they agreed with it. So you get the full picture. Now, with that said, and obviously I'm always about consistency, the food and beverage is different. Because we received that information from the Mad Art Company, they applied their PPP to the salary. So when you look at the reports for the Yacht Club, Beach Club, Clubhouse Grill, that will have the offset to the payroll. So when I gave you those numbers already have the PPP applied to it. Whereas aquatics, golf, or any other public works, it does not. Okay? Important, but that's the way we're going to report it.
Question.
Sure.
If I remember correctly, under the original terms of the PPP, if we kept everybody on the payroll until June 21st, that loan converted to a grant. Now, I know they extended the PPP from June 21st. The 336, does that reflect the conversion over to the grant? And have we been notified of such from the government?
Yeah, no, first of all, that's an excellent question, and it warrants me discussing it. So the way it works is this for everybody, is that as long as we keep everybody employed, we take it as other income. With that said, there always is this possibility, and I believe it's been extended 24 weeks. And where now I believe that I know we will use the full 1.143, whereas before I was estimating with the date that Frank gave, I didn't think we would use all of it. So we recorded as other income. If for whatever reason, and each time we record that other income, our loan payable goes down because that is a loan. At the end of the day, assuming we use all of it and assume we kept everybody employed per the agreement in the contract, that loan should be forgiven. There's a possibility that it may not be forgiven. If that's the case, we would have to book an expense for that $1.143 million, and I would have a loan payable. So that's pretty important to everybody, and that's how it works for everybody. So it gets forgiven each month as we utilize it, assuming that we have everybody employed, and we are. But if it isn't forgiven at the end, that would be a loan payable, and then you would see in that month an expense for $1.143 million, and then obviously that would change the whole complexion of our P&L. All right? Any questions on that? It's pretty important. Good. Okay. If anybody else has a question, if not, Doug?
Other questions for John?
Yeah, and if not, feel free on this because it is important. Email me tomorrow, call me.
John, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the treasurer's report. Larry?
Okay. Next slide, Michelle. There we go. As of May, our rate of return, and I had the last 2 months I've mentioned this, that we were going to drop down. Our rate of return is now approximately 1.6%. If you remember last month, it was 1.9. May 31st, we had approximately 12.8 million in cash, approximately 7.1 invested in CDARS, and approximately 5.7 million in money market funds. The reserves, as of May, you can see that, and again, this is unaudited because the audit's underway. So we started April 30th at 3.5 in a replacement reserve account, and as of May 31st, it sits at 5.2 million. Bulkheads started at 1.6 and sit now at 2.2. The roads at 500,000 and they are at 700,000. The new capital reserve account is at, it's actually, I think it's 167,000, so it's 0.2. And so the total, we ended the year at 5.6 million, and as of today, we're at 8.3 in our total reserve accounts. The next slide, okay. The replacement items that we're talking about, John mentioned the police building, North Star, the admin building. I think they finished the splash pad at the sports court. I was over there today. I think it's done. Yacht club and beach club items. So at this point, our expenditures, 1.2. We started at 3.4. We're projecting the balance to be at the end of the year at $4 million. Again, that's not where we need to be in the replacement account, replacement reserves. But we're, we now have some time to catch up. We'll see what happens with COVID. Bulkheads started at 1.6, and with the work that's anticipated to be done, we should end the year at $753,000. Roads again, 506,000 with the work. Not sure if we're going to get all $971,000 done this year, but that's what we were projecting. So at our projection at this point for April of 2021, we're projecting 4.674 million. And then the last item I have is I've been on a monthly basis since we extended the time to submit your assessment dollars. The assessments due for the association are $9,126,237. As of yesterday, we've received $7,169,454, which is 78.56% of the assessment. This time last year, we had received $8.3 million in assessments. So if you haven't paid your assessments, you have till August 1st to get them in, and we would appreciate it. That's all I have.
Thank you, Larry. Next item on the agenda is public comments. As with public comments, if you wish to make a public comment, please state your name and your address. The floor is now open for public comments. Seeing none, I'll close that portion of the meeting and move on to the next item. Next item is capital purchase requests. As of this meeting, there have been no requests for capital purchase items, so we'll move on to the next item, and that is CPI violations. As of this meeting, there is no CPI violations to be reported. So move on to the next item on the agenda, that is unfinished business. We have no unfinished business from the previous meeting. So the next item on the agenda is new business. The first item is a motion to approve submission of an application for text amendments to Worcester County. Colette.
Sorry. Jesus. Right here it is, sorry. The motion is to approve submission of application for a text amendment to the Worcester County Zoning and Subdivision Control Article. and to approve the submission of an app such that electronic signs may be placed within Ocean Pines for the purpose of facilitating public announcements. The purpose and effect: this text amendment will be needed in order for Ocean Pines to be allowed to lawfully place electronic signs within our boundaries for the purposes of facilitating public information announcements. Background: the OPA Communications Advisory Committee has been researching the prospect of installing digital electronic signage to replace OPA's outdated, labor-intensive letterboard signs. Part of that work has been engaging with Worcester County officials regarding what signs OPA would be permitted to install. Determined that existing zoning codes must be amended to carve county officials drafted a text amendment with the appropriate language, which the Communications Advisory Committee then reviewed and updated where needed. This amendment must now be submitted to the county zoning office for approval. This motion to submit the application is the next step in the process. Should the text amendment be so approved by the county, OPA can then move forward with considerations for digital signage to replace our outdated signs. Consideration of an electronic sign system is desired in order to better ensure timely updates to the information. And the cost of submitting that application is $350.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. I'll start. So in essence, we're just talking about applying for the text amendment. I saw the form that was associated with that application in the board packet, and basically $300 to see if we can get the right verbiage and get the clearance from the county to start the process of putting up those signs. That doesn't mean we're going to actually purchase the signs and move forward any kind of capital purchase, but we will have the proper governance and so on and so forth from the county to move forward should we decide to do so. Is that correct?
That's correct. And once the county approves it, then it would be up to Ocean Pines to determine whether they are in favor of moving forward.
One other question. Do we know, assuming we move forward with this, do we know how long that, assuming they approve it, how long that approval will remain in place? For example, with the budget coming up and knowing that, we want to make sure we're very prudent with regard to expenses going forward, especially with the COVID-19 environment. Is there a deadline to where we'd have to take some action? Does it expire, or can we find that out? Because I think that's important. Certainly, I see no harm or no problem with getting the submission of the application approved now, but that doesn't automatically make us or commit us to creating an expense on that side, but certainly we'll have that. So, I mean.
No, all this does is change the text of the law.
Okay.
And once that text is changed, then it's encoded.
Okay. So
and
that
we can act at any point in the future, choose not to act. If the membership doesn't want this or the board doesn't want to move forward on this, we're not required to. It just allows us to. The county would prefer that we move forward on this because they are not in favor of the signs that we have now. They would like to see those signs replaced with something that in their view is safer in terms of the traffic traveling up and down the roads. But there's no requirement.
Thank you, Colette. Other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Please record the motion carried unanimously. I'm sorry, apologies. I was remiss. Director Rogers has an excused absence for this evening. She did let us know several days ago that she would not be able to make tonight's meeting. So I just wanted to make sure that people were aware of that. I should have mentioned that earlier, but please forgive my oversight. But she does have an excused absence. The next item on the agenda is a motion to direct legal counsel to develop wording necessary to amend the DRs for rentals. Frank?
Okay, the topic is amending the declaration of restrictions in all sections to ban rentals of less than 1 week. The motion to direct legal counsel to develop the wording necessary to amend the declaration of restrictions in all sections to ban rentals of less than 1 week, and once established, to place that question before all homeowners in a referendum vote. The purpose and effect: Short-term rentals of less than 1 week, have proliferated in Ocean Pines and are promoted by national rental organizations such as Airbnb, VBRO, Flipkey, HomeAway, and others. These short-term rentals are embraced by a number of homeowners and detested by others. Worcester County has enacted recent legislation regulating and requiring registration of these properties in a largely voluntary program that lacks funding for enforcement. The number of homeowner complaints last summer and the number of homeowners that subscribe to these rental programs makes this a community-wide issue that justifies a referendum. Worcester County has made it clear that they will consider specific text amendments that will apply to Ocean Pines if so requested. The outcome of this referendum will provide guidance to the board whether or not to request this action. Passage or failure of this referendum will provide guidance to the board as whether or not, same sense, to request this action. Passage of referendum and a request for text amendment regarding short-term rentals will provide the community with the strongest possible regulation and restrictions on short-term rentals.
Is there a second? Discussion.
I have a little bit.
Tom.
All right. This has all come up because of a property in Ocean Pines that we've gotten a ton of emails and we've gone back and forth with. And frankly, I cannot agree with this, period, because we're basing it on, and I don't want to say a few, but we're basing it on some properties within the Pines that are blatantly disregarding the rules that the county has put forth last year in order to make sure that this doesn't happen with rentals, period. Not just short-term, but rentals, period. Not all of the places that are Airbnbs are as derelict as the ones that we've been discussing for the last 2 weeks. My personal opinion is I don't think we should get involved more than we already have. If you look at what we've done and Steve's done from a board perspective in the last 2 weeks, we've gotten the zoning and enforcement agency of the county to actually get off their butts and come and go after these people, which is why they're funded by the $200 per rental unit in Worcester County. Mind you, there's over, the number's got to be over 10,000 rental units in Worcester County. To say that they lack funding for enforcement, as far as I'm concerned, I don't believe it. I'd like to see the funding because I know I pay on a couple of properties for this, and I know hundreds of people, thousands of people that pay even more. I think that as a community and as a board, we've done the right thing in going to the county and saying, this is your law. You made it. It's time to start enforcing it. You've collected the monies, and now it's time. So I think my personal opinion is I will not approve. I won't vote yay on this just because, A, in this time that we have, I wouldn't want to put out the money and the cost for the attorney's fees and for the referendum, which is going to be extravagant. B, I think that the county's already put together a regulation and a law, which I have here, and I think that they should start utilizing their ability to enforce, go after the people that are wrong. We can tell them who they are, like we've done this last couple of weeks, and they've gone after them. So that's where I am on this. I can't agree with banning short-term rentals. What you have to realize too is there's a lot of people that come into Ocean Pines that aren't ready to retire yet. They're buying some of these derelict homes. They're fixing them up and they're renting them for a couple of years until they can retire. And then they're moving into them and being residents of Ocean Pines. Now, yes, there are people on the complete opposite side that are doing it just as for financial gain. And there's always going to be those people. But those are the people that the county has to go after. That's just my opinion.
Other discussion. Frank.
Okay, I'd prepared this. First, I'm presenting two motions for referendum that are highly related. This motion that we're currently discussing asks whether rentals of 1 week or less should be banned in all sections of Ocean Pines. The second motion asks homeowners if such rentals should be subject to more regulations. As a result, the discussions have to be somewhat commingled because they're just interrelated, okay? The reason for both motions is the homeowners may accept both, they may reject both, or they may choose one over the other, okay? First, point number one, the motion to ban rentals of less than 1 week is a community-wide issue. These rentals have the possibility of affecting any one of our 8,452 homeowners. In addition, banning these rentals will also affect a number of other stakeholders. First, you have 180 plus homeowners who currently list on Airbnb or similar sites. Realtors are definitely involved, and you have property managers that will affect. I believe that all interested parties should have the ability to state their case for or against these rentals, and the community should decide the outcome. Number two, although the number of reported problems with short-term rentals has been small, less than a handful, the problems have been large and ongoing for surrounding homes. To Tom's point, yeah, the board got off its dead duff, but it really has been on its duff for a year working with the county. The property specifically in question has complaints going back for 3 years. Last year, we sat and talked with the county commissioners in a room 12 months ago about the property when they're passing the legislation. And 2 weeks ago, the homeowners around that home said they were approaching the county, and the county officials were telling them, our hands are tied, we can't do anything. That is not acceptable. Look, somebody at 1:30 in the morning explodes fireworks in front of your house, okay, on a Friday. You don't want to wait until Monday morning to file a complaint with somebody that says, I can't do anything, my hands are tied. And you don't want a policeman from Ocean Pines to come that says, I can go talk with them, but I can't do anything. And that's the situation today. Number three.
Oh, go ahead, Frank.
The recent legislation passed by the county is, number one, voluntary. Number two, it has been largely ineffective in handling the problems in a timely manner. And three, it does not have funding for enforcement. Number four, homeowners rightfully expect rapid enforcement when egregious situations take place. Currently, no restrictions or enforcement mechanisms exist at the Ocean Pines or county levels to effect a rapid solution to these types of situations. Number five, in last year's meetings with the commissioners, they indicated that the short-term rental issue was, number one, largely an OP issue. And the reason they said that is because the other areas like Ocean City, Pocomoke, Snow Hill, Berlin have city municipalities. So they can enforce and they can pass zoning and enforce their own laws. We cannot do that. Number two, they said they were willing to work with us to develop text amendments that was applicable to Ocean Pines, but they also clearly said the ball's in our court to ask for these amendments. The reasons for both motions is that it's highly unlikely that all 20 sections of Ocean Pines would vote to ban short-term rentals. For those sections that do not permit them, the only viable methods to regulate issues such as occupancy, trash, parking, and noise is by requesting text amendments from the county. Point number seven, another point regarding the motions. Banning short-term rentals through our declarations of restrictions is a permanent solution for the sections that approve the requested change. However, and if adjacent section does not ban short-term rentals, the only avenue for addressing the problems would be via a text amendment. So like last year where we had a situation of somebody decided to bring in, a band like the Great Train Robbery for a graduation and they play until midnight, okay, your section may ban that by declaration of restrictions, but if you're bordering a section that doesn't and they bring it in, guess what? You still have the noise and no solution to your problem. And then I just want to reiterate that we're in the same place today that we were last year, okay? I don't want to be in the same position in 2021. That's why I want to get this in front of the people. Let them make the determination. We have 8,452 homeowners, and I'll tell you what, not one of us sitting here when we were running for election had a question asked of us about how we feel about short-term rentals. And I don't think 7 of us should try to determine whether we have them or whether we don't, okay? Or whether we get the text amendments or we don't. We have 8,452 possible homeowners affected. Let them decide after they hear from all the stakeholders.
Yeah, well said. I got Colette and then Larry. Colette.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing you say, Frank, is that the text amendment approach may be preferable because it would provide universal coverage throughout Ocean Pines in terms of what the regulations are. Am I correct in understanding that? Or you feel that we need a two-pronged approach?
I really personally don't have a preference, but I think there's two solutions, potential solutions to the problem, okay? Assuming the homeowners want a solution. By the way, the homeowners may say they're not a problem and we don't want text amendments. Mm-hmm. And we're exactly where we're at today. but everybody knows that that's what the homeowners want. If we go only the declaration of restriction routes, the chances of all the sections passing them are not real good.
Right. You made that
And when we
point.
go to enforce our declaration of restrictions, as we found out recently, and I can't give the address because that's a violation in Maryland HOA, but I'll give you the case history. In 2004, somebody parked junk cars in a driveway. The board went and got a court order to prevent them from doing it. Okay, the junk cars appeared last year again. We went and got a court order, and I think John did it at the beginning of May. Okay, the first response to it is the plaintiff has 30 days to respond. Okay, after 30 days, if it goes to court today with COVID, we won't be in court arguing that, litigating that until the first of the year. That's not a timely solution when somebody's piling trash or making noise or doing something other that's egregious to deteriorate your home value.
Yeah, and Frank, in my conversation with the county, the indication was that if there are firecrackers or noise violations, they are not able to engage in timely enforcement because their workday ends at 5 p.m. So, what I'm interested in, I could certainly support exploring this, but I really want to make sure that when you say that we are subject to more regulations, that those regulations include enforcement that is enforceable, right? And that it is rapid and significant penalties. The other issue I think that we've encountered with these cases is the idea of people who are subletting. So an owner rents to party A sublets to these short-term renters. So we're 2 degrees removed from the source of anybody that we have reach to influence. Yeah. And so I'd like to see whatever we put in place address that issue.
Let me respond to that. Okay, first, we kind of went through the situation of what happens when we try to enforce the declaration of restrictions. Okay.
Right.
Bottom line to that is in the front end, we've done it as fast as we can. Then we get in the court system and the court system runs on their own time.
Right.
Okay. Last year, Chief Massey gave the board members a potential text amendment for noise. The way the text amendment would work is if the commissioners agree to it, and if we get a text amendment, and if somebody violated that, and that would require the following. Number one, the police would need to get some equipment to measure noise that they don't have right now. But if you said somebody's playing a band or somebody's setting off firecrackers or somebody's doing some noise-related activity past the hours of the ordinance, the police could come up, they could measure it. If it was in violation, the police could write a citation and ticket the people for it immediately.
So the short-term renters would be ticketed immediately.
Correct.
And then what about enforcement that's longer term for the people who are renting to these renters?
That would only be if we had other things in text amendments, because with our declaration of restrictions, we can't fine.
Right.
So the only thing that you could do, but we could put text amendments and ask text amendments for occupancy. We could ask it for trash. We could ask it for parking. We could ask it for noise. And I think that the idea behind setting up a work group is to work with John and the staff to figure out exactly what areas. And by the way, not only the staff, a number of realtors have said they'd like to participate. A number of people that list on Airbnb said they'd like to participate. And some former board members have said they'd like to participate so that we get something that makes sense, it's reasonable.
And so what I'm hearing you say then is that the enforcement would rest with the county.
No, it would rest with our police department if we got the text amendments.
If we get the text amendments,
Yes.
okay.
Larry.
After going what we've gone through the last couple of weeks on a couple of these properties here, I think the focus on trying to limit short-term rentals is not the way we need to go, Frank. Even in talking with the homeowners on the properties that we've been dealing with, they weren't concerned about the length of time of the rental. It's the number of people. So I don't think the short-term rental issue, renting properties for less than 1 week, I don't think that's the solution. But I do agree that we need to do something to try to get control of the properties that are out of control. So my real problem is the enforcement issue and how timely it could be. And actually, I spoke with the chief last Friday, and we talked about the noise issue and whether they have the equipment to measure the decibels or not. You got to be there when the noise is being made. And, if you got a band playing, that's one thing. They can stand there and they be able to measure the band. But fireworks and just people having a rowdy party, it's a tough thing to enforce. So there's no question that we have to address this issue in some way. And I'd like to point out too, Tom, just so you understand, I met early. I was in the meetings early with Chip Rutino and Bunting and the enforcement guy or the guy from the county that does and they made it perfectly clear to us there would be no enforcement of this. They said that from the very beginning. They're not putting funds aside for it. I was shocked that they jumped all over this particular property we've been talking about as quickly as they did. So, I give some credence to what you have to say, that maybe they will enforce it on the short term, because we have put some pressure, and Steve's done a great job in getting the information to them and working with them. But I think our focus needs to be similarly what the county has done, looking at the number of rooms, the number of bathrooms, the square footage, and the number of parking places. And if we can look at doing something that for Ocean Pines that can be enforced, as opposed to, I think quite honestly, it's wasting our time worrying about whether it's a week rental or a 4-day rental or a 3-day rental. I think the issue is the number of people and the number of vehicles, and of course, all of that leads to the amount of trash and ultimately leads to the noise problem. So while I understand, Frank, that we need to do something, I think the focus needs to be more along the lines of what the county did. And if we can get, I don't know if this is possible or not, because maybe Steve knows, whether or not we can have somehow enact the county regulations as a text amendment for Ocean Pines, and then that would give the police department the ability to enforce at that point. We've had discussions about whether or not evictions would be appropriate and things like that. I don't think that's feasible, or eviction is a whole different ballgame. Yeah. So anyway, I think the focus should be on the number of people, vehicles, and the unruly behavior, as opposed to the length of rentals. And listen, I used to have a rental property, and Tom can tell you, you get people that come down here for weddings, they want to rent a place for 4 days, So we're going to cut out a chunk of business for residents here who rent properties, because we are having some problem with a small number. So I think the focus doesn't need to be on the time frame, but on the number of people. And again, I'd like to emphasize that in talking to the homeowners that we've been dealing with, because I went out to the houses and spoke to the neighbors, and all of them said that the length of time is not the issue. It's the number of people, the cars, and the disruptive behavior.
If I can respond, please.
Sam, hold on, one at a time, please.
He directed it to me. If I could just respond.
Tom, then I'm going to say something, and then we're going to go to Steve, and then Frank. So Tom,
I understand what you say when you said you talked to Jimmy and Chip and Ed, and I get that, but they've already set a precedence now. They've already set a precedence by going after 2 properties in 2 weeks, which now that that's set, as far as I'm concerned, they got to start going after the rest of them if we start bringing it up. That's my opinion. Secondly, I agree with you. I don't disagree with you. That's my thing. You can't take this business away because no matter how bad these 10 properties that might be out of 8,500, there's another 150 that bring people into this community and spend a lot of money doing weddings and doing other things that we need. And we don't need derelict properties. We need people fixing properties up and spending money in Ocean Pines. Now, we need a way to enforce the problems that we're having. And I have no problem getting text amendments about people having too much trash out and people parking. Believe me, I had the worst problem with people parking in my yard. But I think banning short-term rentals is so overblown for what we're looking at. I don't think, as Larry said, it solves any of the problems, and I don't think we would ever be able to get it done. So I'm done now.
So I'm going to comment, and then Steve, and then Frank. So I'm going to sort of follow up on what Tom and Larry have said. Well, Frank, I understand that we have to address the issue. I'm not convinced that banning short-term rentals is the solution we're looking for. Knowing and I won't just repeat all the other things that have just been said, there's benefit to having people, and I believe that the folks aren't worried about the semantics of whether or not it's a 4-day or 7-day rental. They're worried about the things that disrupt them, which in this case is noise, trash, and parking. I actually spoke to someone today who reported to me because he asked me what was going to be on the agenda tonight, and I told him we were discussing the short-term rentals. He goes, it's interesting is that I've had renters right across the street from me forever, and they're as quiet as a church mouse, And so, when I hear that, I say, well, we can't just sort of mandate that everybody, is going to be a bad renter. And so I'm kind of like really not supporting the idea. However, the notion of text amendments to allow, in my opinion, to allow some level of enforcement by our police department that's backed by the county is the solution we should be looking for. Because number one, it identifies an issue that would be categorized as disruptive to our clientele and to our residents, and two, allow an immediacy of action, okay, rather than having to go through, several layers of bureaucracy in order to get, something, or like what was brought up earlier, yeah, great, they put all this trash out, but they're gone, and we have to wait till Monday for, at 8 o'clock before we can get anybody to mention it. I think a couple of things. One, with regard to being able to enforce those kinds of things now not Section 8 of Ocean Pines, but Section 8 of all of the DRs has some language in there that talks about the disturbances and so on and so forth. I think we have that, and what I would like to do is, by the way, Frank, Steve, and Cammie are the work group from the board that's looking into this issue. So I would ask you guys to consider how can we leverage, I think the text amendment thing is one of the things we should leverage that the work group should really look at and coordinate with the county. And how can we certainly build something that allows our police department, or if it's suggested by the county that there's another entity that can do the enforcement, to allow that immediacy of enforcement. I think the other areas that we have to look at, you guys touched on. I think it's when the county passed that law, they made very clear indications of what constitutes a bedroom. All right. In other words, you can't just say, oh, I got the 2 bunks out in the garage. That's another bedroom. No, that's not it. And I think they also talked about the number of occupants per square foot. I think my input would be, let's go to the county and open that dialogue and say, guys, help me understand exactly what you meant by here's how we interpret that, and we want to be able to enforce it. And help me understand how we can do that, because I think a partnership with the county at this point, with some level, of enforcement is the way to go. So I'll go on record and say I don't think, and quite frankly, I'm not going to vote for banning short-term rentals, but I do want to have some momentum going forward that will allow us to have some enforcement, because we clearly have to address these issues as quickly as possible. So I got Steve, and then Frank, and then Colette. Steve.
Okay, partly I think just for the community, I want to give a little bit of background on what has happened, because we did get several emails about a particular property where the residents near that property were really being deeply impacted by just the noise, the disturbance, late night activities, multiple cars, all kinds of issues. I reached out to our commissioner, Chip Bertino. Chip got us in touch with Jennifer Keener and Ed Tudor, who are county representatives in the Department of Planning and Review. They have actually visited the property. Ed Tudor was on the property on Saturday morning, no less, taking a look at it. Come to find out, the property is is owned by one person, but it's being rented. Someone else rented it who lives in Connecticut, and that person was renting it out in an Airbnb situation, no license. Big problem. So the county is putting a citation on them for having a property that they're renting without a license. That's not consistent with their guidelines. Another property came up, called the county, don't have a license. Another problem. So now they're working on that one. But they're taking action on these properties. The third one that came up to me today, I called down to the county. There's a person there now. I have their name, number, everything. I can call them and say, is this property licensed? It is licensed. And everything's being done appropriately on that property. The problem is there's trash that has already been mentioned. It gets put out at the end of a 3-day rental or whatever, and it sits there until whenever the trash pickup day is. So I really think this issue needs to be something the work group really works on. I'm not in favor of going right now to a referendum to try to deal with this, but I would like to see the work group come up and maybe get a couple of county people involved if we need to, but just have the conversations to figure out. And I think the real concerns have to do with properties that are being rented on a long-term rental, and that person is turning around and turning it into a business-making Airbnb or one of the other rentals. Parking and trash are the two biggest problems that we're facing quite often. And also, I would plead to the residents, if you live next door to a situation where it's problematic, let us know, because we can go to the county, and the county will take action if we put enough information in front of them and ask them to first verify, does the property have a license? If it doesn't, then they have lots of means to bring pressure to bear. So I think our residents need to help us as well, to help do the enforcement in a sense. So that's basically just some background that I wanted people to understand. So I'm not in favor of this motion as it stands, but I'm very glad to work on a work group to try to come up with ways to improve this situation.
Thank you, Steve. Frank, you're next.
Hey, let me kind of explain the rationale behind having the two motions. There's two broad ways to go. One way is to ban something. The other way is to regulate it. And I mean, I got the same correspondence from the same residents that on a problem property that said, we don't know that you have to ban it. I mean, just regulate it more tightly. I have no problem with regulating it tightly. I think it's a community issue, not one of us seven, because we have a basic issue here, guys, with dealing with our community and dealing with the county commissioners. And I'll frame it in terms, I won't be presumptuous and say, pretend you're a county commissioner. But if somebody out in the audience comes in front of us and says, I want you to ban rental properties and I want you to create a referendum, we say, okay, you have to go out and get 845 signatures on a petition if you can't sell us. If we go to the county commissioners and ask them for a text amendment, that's fair game for our commissioners to ask us one basic question, and that is, who beside you seven in the community want these amendments? You know what? We can't answer that question unless we ask the community. That's the whole issue for two of them. Oh, it's a disarming question. Who wants it? I mean, I will guess, just as a random guess, if there's 180 Airbnb properties and we know of 3 problem childs, okay, we can probably expect pushback from 177 people. Okay? That means we should at least have 178 that want them regulated beside us 7. We don't have those numbers unless we ask people. And that's what these things are for. Ask the community. Nothing more. I have no position on it. Quite frankly, the way the community goes, I agree with Larry. I think that if something has to be done, it has to be done quickly. The text amendment is the way to go if you want quick enforcement. But I think it's a question that we have to ask the community at large. And yeah, it's expensive. But you know what? Some questions, it comes with the turf sometimes. Because quite frankly, if we're not committed to protecting homeowners' value and protecting the quality of life in the community, then they should disband the damn association. There are times when you have to spend money to get the answers that you need to do to serve the community. And this is one of them.
Colette?
Yeah, I'm glad, Frank, that you brought up that issue of ban versus regulate, because I agree with the rest of these guys that I don't think banning the short-term rentals is really the way we want to go. If we did, I think that would require a referendum. But to regulate, I don't think we really need a referendum because our DRs already have some of the language that reflects the fact that our founding four people wanted to create a peaceful community. And so they put some language in there that was suitable. So I think that I feel comfortable that we, as the people who've been elected to govern Ocean Pines, that we could go forward with some text amendment language. The other issue I wanted to raise up is I don't think it's these problem behaviors are confined to rentals. I think there are people who own property, who use their own property, and don't always use their own property responsibly or courteously. And so I think the fact that we have that language in our DRs already with respect to noise and other nuisance behavior, that applies to everybody. That doesn't just apply to rentals. So whatever text amendment we're going to go after, I would like the work group to discuss whether that language could address that behavior regardless of who is engaging in the behavior. The parking problem, the trash problem, the nuisance behavior, and the noise. Those are all things that people have complained about. I'm sure Chief Massey has a pretty thick file of people who've called making complaints about those things. And it occurs regardless of whether you're an owner with guests in your house or your guests are renters.
By the way, your point is well taken. The text amendment applies to everybody. And just one other point, Larry, the difference between the week and the county defines a short-term rental as something less than 28 days.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's the terminology. But I'm fine to go with the flow as long as we understand. And by the way, I'm more inclined personally, okay, although I don't know where the community wants to go with the text amendment, because if somebody does something wrong and you have immediate response from the police department, which can issue a citation, most people that's all you need, right? Under 99.99% of the circumstances. So I could go with the flow, just going for the text amendment with the understanding that if we get asked a question, who wants it, and we get the pushback, and I'm pretty sure we're going to get pushback, okay, that we're going with 7, not with a whole stack of people that say we should do this.
Steve?
Yeah, I mean,
Just
Sorry.
one response to
Please,
that
go ahead.
pushback issue. We could have a town hall meeting and solicit input from the community. I think that before we spent the money on a referendum, we may gauge,
Survey.
or survey, gather some data that is less costly and maybe a little less formal than a referendum to see what the sentiment in the community is. I know that would delay the process somewhat, but while you guys are doing your work group work, we could put out some kind of a survey.
Steve, you're next.
I think if we could do a text amendment to get enforcement, that's the path I'd like to take. I also wanted to say there is a capability now within Ocean Pines to do surveys very quickly. It's part of what has been purchased for the election committee for the election, but it's basically a survey type program. And that would be helpful for the people that have emails, obviously. So you have I think it's around 60% or so of people who have emails within our database right now. So we could get a pretty good sampling of what people thought by using our survey.
Other discussion, Larry.
Yeah, just one more point. Frank, I love your passion on this, but we were elected to the board to make these kind of decisions. I think it's a great idea that we go ahead and maybe have a town hall meeting to get some feedback from the community and find out, listen to what the community has to say. But ultimately, I think if there's pushback from the county, our response is that, the residents of Ocean Pines elected the 7 of us to represent them. And this is what we think they want.
Okay, one final comment. So first of all, along those lines, I think that we understand the sentiment here, but I like Steve's approach. I think all of this discussion kind of contributes to the investigation and the other discussions that the work group is going to have. So I think we've got a basis of information. It's good for us to have this kind of interaction, and then we can take that, and the folks in the work group can consider, some additional work, and maybe come to the board and make another recommendation when we've got some more information. But seeing no more discussion on the issue, I'll close the discussion and pose the question. All those in favor of the motion as presented to ban rentals for less than 1 week, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed?
Okay.
The motion is defeated, but very good discussion. I appreciate everybody sharing their opinion. This next item under new business was added as part of our amended agenda. It's a request to have text amendments for short-term rentals. Frank.
Let's see. This one is requesting text amendments to regulate short-term rentals within the Ocean Pines community. The motion is to direct legal counsel to develop the wording necessary to place the following question before all homeowners in referendum vote. Should the Board of Directors request the county commissioners to enact a series of text amendments to regulate short-term rentals within Ocean Pines?
Is there a second? Second. Discussion.
Well, I think with the discussion we had, okay, and as far as both of these motions go, we can go back and do the work group kind of thing, develop the text, what we think text amendments would be. We could hold a town hall, although right now I think that's kind of a dubious. I don't know where we hold it. I mean,
Don't do a survey.
Yeah. Surveys away. And by the way, the survey gets the same thing as the referendum. It just doesn't, there's a difference between a survey, a poll, and a vote, right? Okay, but gets the same kind of thing of a rough number of numbers, people in favor of something, and then bring that to the town hall and take that to the commissioners. The only thing that I think we have to guard against, and I mean, I feel comfortable with the approach, is that we're not sitting here discussing the same problem next July. Because, for a lot of, look, this last year was a mulligan because we, in fact, had to wait for the county to get their legislation, see how the county was going to enforce it. Okay, and when that happened, to be perfectly honest, Doug and I had a chat, and, basically the pandemic was on us. Okay, so we lost a year. Let's don't lose another year. And by the way, I don't know how fast text amendments go. I know nothing about them. So the sooner the better, because, maybe there are fences and time fences in there when things have to be done to be effective next season. And we want to make sure that we hit those gates.
Other discussion.
Yeah, I could just speak a little bit to how long a text amendment takes. Once we get the language, one of the commissioners needs to accept the proposal and take it before the commission, and the commission votes. So it depends on their calendar, but it could, once you get the language, it wouldn't necessarily have to take a huge amount of time.
Other discussion? Larry, go ahead.
I think with the discussion on the last motion, I would ask Frank, maybe you want to withdraw the motion.
Yeah. Okay. I'm willing to do that.
Oh, well, very good. You actually asked a question that I was going to, whether we passed it or not, but if you're considering withdrawing the motion based on the discussion, I think that's appropriate. Confirmation, Frank, that you would withdraw the motion based on our discussion? All right, let's consider the motion withdrawn. Again, thank you very much. I think it was a good discussion. So seeing that was the last item under new business, we're moving to the next item on our agenda, that's appointments. Margaret McGovern, second term ARC, and Dick Kylig, second term Budget and Finance. I'd ask my board colleagues to consider both of those appointments. Is there a second for those two appointments as noted? Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of appointing Margaret McGovern, second term ARC, and Dick Kylig, second term Budget and Finance, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, they're so appointed. Next item on the agenda is I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.